Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Angela Brennan and today I'm bringing you my second video of Yana Smakula's Christmas collection with the Festive Poinsettias BetterPress and Stencil bundle. This is a BetterPress plate which covers the entire background and it comes with 6 layered stencils to color that background. It's a relatively easy background to color and it's really very pretty. You don't have to do much once you've got the background done. All you need is a sentiment. As I don't have BetterPress cotton cards that measure an A7 size, I'm using the Arches Aquarelle cold pressed 100% cotton watercolor paper here to letterpress the image. I start off by inking the BetterPress plate with the BetterPress black ink, which is a nice dark ink, and I put a protective sheet on the chase platform so that the ink doesn't smear onto the platform. This BetterPress plate is larger than the usual BetterPress plate that covers an A2 card, and I do not want to waste all that inking. So all the cards I make, most of the cards I make here are on the larger side, which is an A7 card which measures 5 inches by 7 inches. So here are the two images that I inked with BetterPress black ink and VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. You can see the slight difference in the black. Maybe it's not very clear in the video, but in real life you can actually see how the BetterPress black ink is darker. Now the BetterPress black ink does stain the press plate. Don't worry about it. Use the Ranger's Archival ink cleaner to clean the press plate. Now it will still leave a little bit of a stain, but it can still function as it's supposed to be, and that stain will not ruin the next color that you ink onto the press plate. So here's another one I've done with the VersaFine Clair Medieval Blue ink. And here is the VersaFine Clair Twilight ink. And then you've got the Morning Mist, which is a grey from the VersaFine Clair range. I did use a lot of VersaFine Clair inks because I do have quite a few of them. And I think they go best with this kind of a template from the inks that I have in my stash. And here you've all of it. And the red panel is the VersaFine Tulip Red ink. And I show you how I complete all of these cards and assemble them. I do use the stencil to color all of them, and I think it is a lovely stencil and easy to color. Now this stencil, because I don't have the best eyesight, I do ink the stencil. In fact, there are 6 stencils. I thought there were 5. There are 6 of them. I put a little dot on the right top corner of the stencil so I can immediately see which way up it is and which side is the right side. But there is a number on the bottom left corner of the stencil to tell you which ones to use first. I do use a stamp wheel for this stenciling, but you see subsequently I don't, because I don't really see the benefit of it, because I still have to use the Best Ever Craft tape to secure the letterpress panel and the stencil onto the stamp wheel. I start off by inking the first layer of the poinsettia leaves as well as some of the berries that go with it with the Altenew Burnt Red Crisp Dye ink. I do like Altenew inks because they come in groups of 4 inks, therefore it allows you to use a gradation of the same hue. However, these burnt red as well as the crimson and the velvet ink pads are from different sets. So I just wanted different hues of red for the 3 layers of the poinsettia to show a differentiation of the colors. Now if you don't have the stencil set, you can watercolor it because it's easy enough to watercolor this. At some point later on in the video, I do show how I do use the ink pads and do some watercoloring on some of the holly and leaves. It's quite versatile how you decide to watercolor it or not. So the red panel, I don't do any coloring. I just use that particular panel and make it the card front with the sentiment. So this is a relatively small collection, Christmas collection from Yana Smakula. I think it's got about 5 or 6 items on it. And here in this video, I just use the Festive Poinsettia BetterPress plate as well as the sentiments, which is the Home for Christmas BetterPress sentiments. When coloring an image with a stencil, it's good to have a few different size blending brushes. So I use the small blending brush. I also use the detail blending brush as well as the mini blending brush. And I've got that all linked in the description below. because it allows you to get into the nooks and crannies. And I only have the blending brushes for each color family. And here's how I clean the blending brush, by just pressing it onto a damp stamp chamois, and then I press it onto a dry cloth just to dry it up. There are many blending brushes out there, so you got to use what you're comfortable with. I did the Auto-New certification program, which means I got a lot of the Auto-New products. So most of the blending brushes I use are the Auto-New blending brushes. And this particular one, which is also the mini blending brush in the Auto-New range, I've got it from Waffle Flower. I'd use a little bit of VersaFine Clear Pine Cone to get a slightly darker edge to the pine cone image on the stencil. So I use a few different shades of brown for the pine cone. And for the middle of the poinsettia, I do use the warm sunshine. But later on you will see I decide to use some glimmer paste. I do like my paste. If you've seen my videos enough, you know when I do my stenciling, I like to use a paste. For almost all the cards, I do use the glimmer paste for the middle or the center of the poinsettias. Here I'm just using a very quick way of coloring all of the leaves, the hollies, just to get it some color into it. And then I use a detail brush with a darker green to give it a little bit of shading. Now you can use any brush really, but I find having different size brushes gives me more precision to color the images that I want to, and to get the highlights as well as the shadow into it. When it comes to BetterPress plates, I do love hot foiling them. Unfortunately, my hot foiling machine is not working, so I use the Glimmer oil press machine. I've had it for more than a couple of years now, and it's worked fine thus far until it just refused to get to the right level of heating and show me that green light to start hot foiling, and last week it just didn't work. So I called Crafter's Companion, and the very next day they sent someone to pick it up for a small fee, and they did say if they cannot repair it, they will not charge me the fee. If it doesn't work, they will not charge me for it. So I'll have to wait and see what happens. Here's the plates, and you can see all the numbers at the left-hand bottom corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got 6 stencils there. Now I can't really see sometimes, so the dot at the top really works for me. And to be honest, the chronology on using the stencils doesn't really matter in my personal opinion, because you're still going to color different parts of the image. So here, because I find it easier, I've just taped the image onto my glass mat and taped the stencil accordingly as well. For this particular image here, I'm not coloring all of it. I'm just doing a little bit of color onto the poinsettia, but leaving the edges of the petals a little bit light or maybe even white to give it that highlight. I use very similar colors for all of it. I do want to say that when you get a hot foiling machine, you've got to get used to it. So when I move on to the next hot foiling machine, if I have to, if I don't get my Gemini foil press machine back working, because Crafter's Companion has discontinued producing and selling the Gemini foil press machine, which means I need to use a new foil press machine, and that would mean getting the Spellbinders Glimmer machine. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I get a new machine, it takes me a little while to get used to it, since the Gemini foil press machine had 3 settings, whereas I think the Spellbinders Glimmer machine has only 1 setting. I'm sure it'll be fine. I just need to get used to it. Most of my cards here I use similar colors because a poinsettia is red, and I do vary the leaves from a more of a teal or a green, but you've got the general color there. And here you go. You've got the VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink and BetterPress black ink. I've colored both of them slightly differently, but I just wanted to see the variation in the background. And here's where I'm going to be doing some watercoloring with distress inks. I use the peel paint as well as the Mode Lawn to color the 2 different types of leaves, or 2 different stencils where you can see the holly as well as the leaves. I prefer using distress inks to do any kind of watercoloring rather than distress oxide inks, because I find the distress oxide inks that's more of a pigment ink, quite chalky, and I just find it easier to do watercoloring with distress inks. You can see me using 2 paintbrushes here. So I use one paintbrush to take quite a concentrated color of the color from the distress ink, and I use the other paintbrush to water it down, because I want a darker color that is closer to the center or the core of the starting part of the petal, and then it gradually gets lightened up. You can do the entire image or the entire background with watercolor. Now, I'm not the best at watercoloring, I just give it a go, but my preferred way of watercoloring is loose watercoloring, so you don't see too much of a detail. So I just put just general color onto it, so you don't have to see too much of a shadow or highlight. I hope you enjoy my videos, and if you do, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press that notification bell so you're alerted when new videos are uploaded. This is the second of 3 videos that I'm releasing for the Christmas collection by Yana Smakula. The first video I released was on the Amaryllis die set, and this is the second video, and the third video will be on the Amaryllis Garden 3D embossing folder, all of it from the same Christmas collection. I will put the links to the other video that I've already released in this collection in the description below so you can check it out. All the products I used, or at least as many of the products I've used, I will list in the description below so it's easier for you to access. I do appreciate all the comments you give in all the various videos I do, because it does give me the impetus to improve and to understand where I'm going wrong, where I'm going right. It's always good to know when you're doing something right, and it's really good to get some positive feedback as well. I do lots of Spellbinders Club Kits videos every month. In fact, I've been asked to continue doing Spellbinders Club videos into 2025, and I've realized that it's probably a good idea to issue or release a playlist of all the videos that I create for each month's club kits into one playlist so it's easier to access. And I've got really good feedback on it, and I'm going to continue doing it every month. I will put a link to the playlist from the October 2024 Spellbinders Club Kits in the description below as well. Here I've decided to use my Nuvo Glimmer Paste Glitterati Gold for the centers of the poinsettia. I can't help it because I think it looks really pretty. I like the way it glitters as well as how it dries with a little bit of a dimensional element. This background has been inked with the VersaFine Clear Tulip Red ink. I don't color this image at all because I think the red background is quite striking. I used the Spellbinders Precision Layering A2 A die set to die cut it into an A2 size panel so it'll fit onto the front of an A2 size card. An A2 size card measures 4¼ inches by 5½ inches, and to give it a little bit more interest, I used the A2 Thin Frames die set from Simon Says Stamp to create a little bit of a thin frame that I will also have a middle rectangle which I will elevate with some foam sheet. I also cut the thin frame with some gold cardstock. So once I've placed the rectangle frame to the card base, I'm going to be using some liquid glue to attach that thin gold frame to the inside of that rectangle base, after which I will place the middle rectangle, which is the rest of the image of that letterpressed poinsettia background, backed with some foam sheet onto the center of that card base, so there is a little bit of dimension and elevation to that element. And then I just use a sentiment from the Home for Christmas press plate set, and I of course use some gems, tiny gems, to the middle of the 2 poinsettia centers that's in the middle panel of the rectangle. It's a pretty simple card. It's one of those cards that's great for mass producing if you want Christmas cards in a hurry. Here the sentiment is from the Mistletoe Greetings press plate and die set, and whenever I get some of these sentiment sets, I do mass produce them in hot foiling. So this is what I have in stock, and this is one of those sentiments that has been negative hot foiled. I have a video on how I hot foil sentiments, including the negative hot foil of sentiments, and I'll link that in the description below for your ease of reference. I like to hot foil sentiments in bulk, so it's easy to use, and I do like using hot foil sentiments on my cards. Here is a letterpressed image that has no ink at all, so you just get an impression of the festive poinsettia background onto the 100% cotton watercolor card. I'm using the layering stencils to ink that image, and it's going to be pretty amazing. But what I do differently here is I start off with the red on the poinsettia, but I want the centers to have a little bit of a purple color. So I add some blue, some Caribbean sky ink from Altenew, because red and blue gives you purple. So I add a little bit of blue to the centers or to the parts, the petals that are closest to the center of the flower, just to give it a little bit of shadow, because the purple is also a slightly darker color. So the purple and red, I think it's quite pretty. And I do the same thing for all three layers of the poinsettia in the layering stencils. I like trying to do mixtures of colors to create another color. So you will see for the leaves, I will use yellow, and I try to use some blue to give it a bit of a shadow. So you get yellow and blue gives you green, whereas red and blue gives you purple. I don't know what you think of this idea. I do wipe out some of the ink from the surface of stencil, so when I put the blue ink, it's not contaminated. I forget to do it sometimes, but I think I like how it turned out with that red and purple. I hope you would try these different techniques of with BetterPress plates, where you use the BetterPress inks, you use different inks within your craft stash, and indeed you impress the image with the letterpress or the press plate without any ink. I think that's quite effective as well. I do like to see when I'm ink blending on these pine cones, I can still see the detailed outline of the pine cone as the ink is applied on it. If you happen to have a working hot foil machine, you can hot foil this entire image and do some inking, because the hot foil does resist the ink, and I call it the hot foil resist method. So you can do a graduation of color across the entire background of the festive poinsettia image, where you can wipe off all the excess ink that sits on the hot foiled areas and have a beautifully inked panel. It's something to try, because I was thinking of trying it, but it doesn't work if you don't hot foil it. So though I don't have my hot foil machine, do check out my Instagram account, Angela Brennan Creations, where I will post all the cards I make, and some of the cards that I don't have a hot foil machine now, I will go back to those press plates and make a card with a hot foil image, so that I can have a look and see how it looks, and I will definitely share it to all of you. Here is the image that's been colored. I think it looks really pretty. What do you think with those images? I think they could do with a little bit more blue, which is a darker green on those leaves. So I put the stencil back and add a little bit more blue to some of those foliage to give it a little bit more of a dramatic effect. I really like the color of this card and how it turned out. I do make a similar card where I don't do any letter pressing, where I use the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 300 series card to just use the 6 layered stencils to create this image. It's pretty easy. Have a look and see how I achieved that in the subsequent part of this video. Poinsettias are such an integral part of the festive period. I think you could also use this as a birthday card for those with birthdays around the festive period. Per usual, I do cover the centers of the poinsettia with the Glimmer Paste Glitterati Gold, because I do like the fact that it will dry with a little bit of dimension. And here I'm using the Misty, the corner of the Misty, to place each of the stencils to color the image, or to create an image of that poinsettia background just with the stencil bundle, which is 6 stencils to create that entire image. And they do stack up quite well. So using the corner of the Misty or any stamping platform, you have a good corner. It's the way to achieve that image that you want, because they will not overlap. I use very similar colors. In fact, I think I probably used the same colors as I did with that impression where I didn't do any inking, and I proceeded to create an impression onto the 100% cotton cardstock and proceed to color it with the layering stencil. So I find that pretty easy to do with these stencil layers without any letter pressing, and it turns out beautifully. But remember, use the right card. So this card that I'm using here is the Strathmore Bristol Smooth card. So we're going to do pure ink blending, or if you're going to do any BetterPress ink blending or inking for that matter, and also some watercoloring, probably the best to use the 100% cotton watercolor card. I continue to ink this 3 layers of poinsettia of the layering stencils with the same reds. I use coral berry and I use grapevine to do some shadows. I think using the 3 layers with the same reds looks great when you've got quite a dark shadow. I do like how this card turns out at the end, so it's quite smooth with no impression at all, but you still get the benefit of the beautiful stencil. Do give it a go. I could have put some paste in some of these layers. I didn't think of it. Now that I'm looking at it, I could have done with paste, a little bit more paste, possibly even in one of the layers of the poinsettia. That's something to think about. I do like using various types of paste when I do stenciling, so it gives it a bit of texture as well as dimension, and I think it does make the image pop. So I could have done more with the paste with these layered stencils. I do like stenciling. In fact, for the Spellbinders Club Kits, I've just recently started receiving the stencil of the month, and I do find it quite enjoyable to put it together, especially using the various pastes that will dry with some dimension. I continue to stencil this image, and I like the way it turned out because it's got all those pretty reds and greens, and the blending turned out really well because I used the Strathmore Bristol Smooth card, which is perfect for ink blending. And here are both the cards, one with some impression without any ink and one with no impression at all, just with the stencils. Next, I get on with the assembly of all these cards. Because these cards are quite large, I basically use an A7 card to assemble all of them. I do the same assembly for all the cards, and I just use slightly different sentiments. I've got quite a few sentiments there which I've letterpressed and die cut, and I've also layered it, so I've got 3 layers on it, and that's why I like having sentiments that come with coordinating dies, so it gives the sentiments a bit of dimension. I do back all of them with some foam sheets, so there's a little bit of depth to the card, and I place it onto an A7 card which measures 5 inches by 7 inches. So I do cut down the impressed or letterpressed image that I've colored and matted it onto a coordinating card, and I've used an A7 card. In fact, to do all this cutting, I use the Waffle Flower A7 layers die set, and it's really ideal to do the die cutting to get a matte layer. And there you go. And this is pretty much how I complete all of the cards that I have letterpressed as well as colored using the coordinating stencil bundle that comes with this Festive Poinsettias. Here I'm showing you a couple of backgrounds. So you got both the black backgrounds here with different inks I've colored differently. And here you've got 2 different cards, one where the image was impressed with no ink and one where it was impressed with a black ink and colored similarly. So you can see the contrast. And here you've got the image that's been stenciled with no impression at all. All of these sentiments come from various sentiment sets which I have hot foiled previously. Here is a card with no coloring using the stencils, just the impression with red background. And here is the one with the black background where I've colored using quite solid colors with 3 different reds for the poinsettias. And here I've done something similar, but I've added some gold onto the poinsettias with some gold metallic paint, and I've done the same thing here. And these sentiments, as I said, when I do get a sentiment set, I do hot foil them in bulk, and I do like using hot foil sentiments on my card. So I've got a link to all these various sentiment sets that I've used in the description below, so it's easy for you to check it out if you like it. I've done splatters on some of the cards with gold metallic watercolor, and I've done splatters with some of the cards with splatter white. When it comes to splatters, it's best to do some experimentation with different paintbrush sizes as well as a different consistency to whatever splatter you're using, be it splatter white or watercolor paint. And here is the final card where I didn't use any of the BetterPress plates but just used the stencils. Do check out the other links to videos that I've put in the description below, which I've made a mention during the course of this video. Here are close-up pictures of all the cards that I've created. I really hope you find inspiration with them. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, remember to press the notification bell so you're alerted when a new video is uploaded. Appreciate you staying till the end of the video and checking out all these cards. Happy crafting, and I'll catch you at my next video. Do take care.